Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. A couple weeks back I had done a review between the, or an overview I should say, of the Glock19 and the Walther PPQ M2, and it seemed to hit a few nerves. People seem to be watching it, so I thought I would do another review comparing the Glock17 and the M&P9. And these are both full-size 9mm striker-fired polymer handguns. So we'll kind of do an overview of each of them, and then do a kind of pros and cons of each. So if you're looking for a full-size 9mm, both of them have newer models that have come out. The M&P 2.0 has come out, and the Glock Gen 5 has come out. But if you're really looking for a handgun, and if you want to keep it inexpensive, maybe it's your first handgun, these are great because they are been on the market for a while. You can get them a little bit cheaper than the newer models, and they are fantastic handguns, very well proven. So let's take a little closer look at each of them. We'll compare them, go over some of the pros and cons of each, and then we'll wrap it up. So stick around, we'll take a look on the tabletop here in a second. Alright, so here we have two very popular striker-fired pistols, Glock17 and the M&P9. I'll put some stats in here. I won't go through all the weights and measurements and all those things, but I will post them here in the video so everybody can take a look at that. But I wanted to just do a quick overview of the size, and you can actually see it as I hold them together, that the dimensions on these are very, very similar. They are almost identical in size. Weights are very close as well. So they are very comparable handguns, and two very popular handguns when it comes to the striker-fired full-size handguns. So what I want to do is break them apart and kind of give you the gist of both of them as a quick overview, and then kind of go through what I think the pros and cons of each of them, and then tell you what my favorite one is, if you haven't guessed already from past videos. So let's take a look at the Glock first. First, we'll go with the sights, and I'll make the note of these because these are ones have been replaced with night sights. So the standard Glock sights are a plastic sight, same shape, but they have a little U goalpost type thing here in the back that you line up your front sight in. They are adjustable in the rear. The front is pinned with a screw underneath the slide, so you can replace these. There's plenty of aftermarket sights out there to replace them, but the standard sights are goalpost and a front dot that are plastic sights. You have slide serrations here in the back, same that they've had across all the Glock models up until now. So they're okay. They're deep. They're wide. You can get a hold of them. They're useful and functional. Next we have a slide release or slide stop. It works just fine. You can buy some aftermarket ones that have some extended on them if you like. One thing to note though, it is not ambidextrous. You only have it on right-handed side or the left side of the handgun. So, but as far as it working as a slide release, it does work very easy. It's easy to swipe off. With the extended, it's even easier. Moving forward, we've got magazine release, squared off magazine release. This is ambidextrous, you can swap it. And again, this is the Gen 4 model Glock 17, but it is there and it does work fine. It drops free. It's an oversized mag release, so it works well, and again, ambidextrous. Trigger, it's the same trigger Glock's had for a long time. As far as the safety, you've got the little bar here in the center of your trigger that releases the safety back here in the back. You can probably see that move a little bit there in the back to get up out of the way. So if you don't hit that safety and try to pull the trigger, it does not work. Squared off handguard for sure. Glock has had those since the beginning. Next you have a single position rail slot for your lights, lasers, those things. The texturing on the grip is actually very nice on the Gen 4s. It's what they call the RTF, the rough textured finish, and or rough textured frame, I think it is actually, but it is very grippy. You've got it in the front and back as well, and it does work very well to get your hand in there. It's not overly stippled, but it's enough to really get a good grasp on the grip. Back straps are interchangeable. There are multiple back straps you can put in there for depending on the size of your hand, what works best for you, but those are interchangeable as well. The slide and barrel are a alloy. They are tough to find on the internet. It's a carbon steel alloy. We don't necessarily know. I've looked around a little bit on the internet and have not found exactly what it is, but it is covered in a tenifer finish to help protect the steel, and the barrel is the same way. As far as the magazines go, it's standard Glock magazine with the plastic, and there's some metal inserts inside there. These are proven, they work really well. The metal feed lips on the top of the magazine are very good. They've been around for a long time and they are proven, just like the Glock is. There are other aftermarket mags that you can get, like ETS. I've used them. I have mixed reviews on the ETS mags, but the standard Glock mags are fantastic and they work very well. All right, so let's look at the M&P. So again, very similar size striker fired pistol, full size gun. I'll put the specs as well for this above, but we'll go through kind of the same way here. Sights, standard sights are 3-dot sights, and they are steel, and they are both adjustable if you need to. They're not pinned in on the front. They have the dovetail. There's plenty of aftermarket sights again as well if you want to put fiber optics or night sights or things like that. There's a ton of them out there for both of these handguns. As far as these fish scale type slide serrations, they work very well. They're very grippy, easy to get a hold of, and they work just nice. I really like those. Moving forward, you've got the slide stop, slide release. It works very well. This one is ambidextrous, so you have it on both sides. And now as far as the slide release, it works. Mine is broken in quite a bit, but it's not as easy as the Glock, I would say, from my opinion. It is ambidextrous. I will say though, again, on the right hand side, if you're using it as a slide release, it's a little bit more difficult because of the design. It doesn't have as much torque or tension to really release the slide as you do on the left hand side. Moving forward, we've got magazine release, and it is ambidextrous, just a button. Magazines do drop free. The trigger is a hinge trigger, so where the Glock had their little blade there in the center, M&P or Smith and Wesson decided to do a hinge trigger. Ultimately does the same thing. You've got a little block there in the back that moves out of the way when you pull that trigger to move it out of safe. Moving forward, you've got a three-position rail, for your lights, lasers, those things. You do have an oversized trigger guard on this. You have a little beaver tail here that you don't have necessarily on the back of the Glock. And then the stippling on the grip, to call it stippling is not really right. It's more of a textured finish, textured plastic. It does have some grip to it, and it is comfortable. It's not as good as the RTF finish on the Glock, but it is very usable. And then when it comes to the slide and the barrel, these are both stainless steel with a armorite finish is what they use on the Smith and Wesson handguns. If we look at the magazines are all steel magazines, and they have a plastic follower that goes along. They work just great. There's some other aftermarkets out there I've used. I've used the Pro Mag ones as well, and they hold up just as well. Difference being though in the magazine, cost-wise, the Glock mags are historically a lot cheaper than the Smith and Wesson mags, and the Glock mags work very well. So if you're looking at buying a bunch of different mags, you're going to spend a lot more on the Smith and Wessons. Okay, let's look at the takedown real quick on both of these. They're a little bit different. The Glock, you're going to actually pull your slide back just a little bit, and there's these two little takedown pins on either side that you're going to slide down and release the slide. Pull the trigger and the slide comes right off. Looking at the internals, you get your trigger group here. They do have some steel slide there on the frame, and then on the slide side you've got a dual spring captured spring on a plastic guide rod. This is the new for the Gen 4s. When this came out, this was their dual spring. It works very well to help minimize recoil. Pulling your barrel out is just as easy. You can get in there and clean it for your field strip. Put that back together. Slide your back of your spring back behind the barrel lug there. Put it back together. All you do is slide it right back on. Run it back. And you're back into fire. Smith and Wesson's a little bit different. You lock your slide back. And there's a rotating pin here. You spin that around. Once you release your slide, you can pull the trigger and that will come off as well. Inside, very similar trigger group. You've got the metal rails inside the polymer frame. In the slide, we have a captured recoil spring. In the M&P, you've got a stainless steel recoil spring and rod. So they're both together. And as far as the barrel, comes out the exact same way. Easy to get in there, field strip and clean. Putting it back together is just as easy. Reverse the process. Tuck your spring back behind there. And slide your, turn this around. Slide your slide back on. Oops. Lock it back. This is so worn it actually pops back into place, but all you would do is rotate that pin back up into place, release your slide, and you're back to normal. Okay, some of my pros and cons about each of them. And again, these are both fantastic handguns. They have both been proven. They both are very reliable. So a lot of things that you nitpick about comes down to personal preference and what you like and what you think are better. There are some things I think are a little more important. Like I'll touch on first stippling, or the slide serrations. You know, that's a useful tool that you really need to be able to get a hold of your handgun to rack that slide. I think these little fish scale serrations that they have on the M&Ps are superior to the flat. They're not as sharp edges that you have on here. These aren't sharp where they're going to cut you, but they really give you a good grip on the slide to pull that back. If your hands are wet or things like that, these are going to work a lot better. Now if we look at the grips and the stippling, I think by far, if you're looking at these two handguns in particular, the Glock stippling is a lot more grippy. It'll hold your hand much better, especially when you're thinking about wet hands, sweating, those kind of things. This is going to give you a better grip than the M&P with their rough kind of texture here a little bit. But if you look at the M&P 2.0, I'll just discuss it. They have a much better stippling that's done on the M&P 2.0. That's actually very rough, almost like a sandpaper that you can really get a good grasp on it. But out of the box, out of these two, I think the Glock stippling is a lot better. When it comes to sights, you know, they both are function very well. The out of the box, the Glock plastic sights and the goalpost, I just don't like as much. They are functional and they've been proven again, but if I want sights, I prefer them to be steel just so I have no worries about it. They both have a little ledge so you can grab them and rack them on a back of a shoe or a countertop table, whatever it is. If you needed one-hand manipulation, they will both definitely work for you there. When it comes to the comfort, I'm going to go with the M&P. Just the way the grip is shaped, it fits my hand very well. It's very comfortable, and it has that more of that 1911 grip angle that makes it point a little bit better for me. Now everybody's different. This is one of those personal preference things. If you get out and shoot them, find out which one works better. Even just putting yourself in a gun shop and feeling them, feel what works for you. But the full-size Glock is very comfortable as well. I just think it's not quite the same as the M&P, and it doesn't have quite the same angle that I like when it comes to shooting. We talk about triggers on both of these. Both triggers are okay. Neither one of them is fantastic. They are both kind of squishy. They kind of just pull through. There's not a real solid wall for you to break. But when you come to reset, if you look at the Glock, you can probably hear it. You get a nice solid reset sound if that's something you're interested in. I'm not much of a trigger snob, so that doesn't really affect me, but there are a lot of people out there that really like that audible reset, and that Glock out of the box on the Gen 4 has that. Looking at the M&P, if we pull that trigger, it's the exact same way, just kind of squishy. Pull weight's about the same on both of them, about 4.5, 5 pounds. Very easy trigger, but it's the same way. If you listen to the reset on the M&P, it's almost indiscernible, and it's you know, again, they both are very functional. They both work just fine. If you want upgrades, there are plenty of them out there, again, for both of these handguns. I've used the Apex triggers in the Smith and Wesson handguns, not just the M&Ps, but even their lower line, the SD models, and they are fantastic. Glock has a ton of aftermarket parts as well that'll improve those triggers on both of them. As I mentioned before, just one of those small things. If you're looking for a slide release out of your slide stop, Glock is going to be much better at that, in my opinion. If you're trying to release the slide with the M&P, there's just a lot more force, and you don't have a lot to necessarily grab there. If you put a Glock extended magazine slide release, you will definitely get a lot better grip out of that too. But even just as a standard, the release is very easy to sweep off. All right, another one is the trigger guard. I kind of mentioned before a little bit about the wide trigger guard that the M&P has. It's a much bigger area for your finger to go in if you're wearing gloves. It's cold climate than you do within the Glock. So the bigger trigger guard for me is nice. It really allows you to wear gloves if you need to inside of there. You have a lot more space to get your hand in there. The Glock, not as much. So you're really limiting yourself there if you're wearing gloves in a colder climate. The larger trigger guard really works well. As far as disassembly, I particularly like the M&P method better. These little tabs, sometimes if your hands are wet or sweaty, or they're just tough to pull sometimes. They do make extended ones that come out you can purchase to make it a little bit easier, but just rotating that pin makes it a lot easier. They're both captured, so you're not leaving anything out on the table, so they both work. I just like the method M&P does a little bit better. And lastly, in the magazines, if you look at the M&P magazine, it's kind of swelled out around the grip. I don't know how well that comes through, but it is a little bit of a swell that comes around that, so you can grab it from almost any angle and help rip that magazine out of there if you needed to. Whereas the Glock, it's not terrible. There's a little bit there you can get. If you have this little hole in the back, a lot of people put plugs in these to keep debris and things like that out of the handle. If you don't put that in there, you do have a little bit there to grab. It's not terrible. Just the M&P, just to me, has a little bit more to actually get should you need to really rip that magazine out of there. Without that plug in there, you can get your thumb up in there and get a little bit of a grip on it. But again, all minor things on two fantastic handguns. They both work and function flawlessly, and they're great, reliable handguns. All right, so that's just an overview of these two handguns here, the Glock17 and the MP9. Both fantastic full-size handguns, plenty of capacity. If you can carry them, they're perfect for that because they are full-size. They're going to give you a really good grip, really good handle on the handgun, add a little extra weight for the recoil. But if you're, plenty of capacity, they're great, reliable handguns. If you are, again, if you're looking for something more inexpensive, maybe your first handgun, home defense handgun, something you're going to keep in a drawer, these are great because they have come down with the newer models coming out, but these two are still fantastic handguns. I love them both, and again, the M&P for me is the winner overall, just because of the way it fits my hand, but I still really enjoy shooting the Glocks, and if I'm going to do some work on one of them, the Glock's probably going to be the one I do more work on because of the aftermarket access to parts and things that are out there already. So I hope you like this video, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. If you have comments, put them down below. I'd love to hear what other people's comments are, see what they think are some pros and cons maybe that I missed. And then till we see you again, happy shooting. We'll talk to you again soon.